You are all welcome to today's deep news analysis. This is where we break things down in a simple and real way Nigerians can understand. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss important updates like this. Today's story is heavy, and it may change everything you think you know. On the 20th of November, everything changed. Nnamdi Kanu was sentenced to life imprisonment by Justice James Omotosho. The decision came fast. The reaction came even faster. Within hours, the country was divided. Some people said justice was finally served. Others said something was very wrong. Then came the move that raised more questions. Kanu was taken far away, to Sokoto prison. Not close to his home. Not close to his people. Far north. And that alone made many Nigerians pause. Because in cases like this, location matters. It affects access. It affects legal process. It affects everything. But that was just the beginning. Because behind that judgment, there were already concerns that many people did not see at first. The speed of the ruling surprised even those who had been following the case closely. For a matter that had lasted for years, the final decision appeared to arrive with unusual urgency. And in Nigeria, when something moves too fast at that level, people begin to ask questions. Legal voices started to react, but not in a loud or dramatic way. It was careful. It was controlled. But it was clear that something about the process did not sit well with many observers. They were not just looking at the outcome. They were looking at how that outcome was reached. That difference is important. Because a judgment is not only about what is decided. It is also about how it is decided. Very quickly, attention shifted from the sentence itself to the steps that led to it. Was everything done properly? Were all legal procedures followed the way they should be? Were all sides given a fair chance? These questions did not come from nowhere. They came from people who understand how the system works. And when those kinds of people begin to question a judgment, it carries weight. At the same time, public reaction continued to grow. Across different parts of the country, discussions became more intense. Some believed the sentence would bring stability. Others feared it could create more tension. But one detail kept coming back into the conversation. Sokoto prison. The decision to move Kanu there did not go unnoticed. It became part of the larger debate. Many began to ask why such a distance was necessary, especially for a case already surrounded by strong public interest. Distance in legal matters is not just physical. It can affect communication. It can affect legal access. It can affect how quickly things move. And in a case like this, every small detail matters. Then came another layer. The timeline. From sentencing to transfer, everything appeared tightly packed. There was little space for pause. Little space for reflection. And in high-profile cases, that kind of pace can raise serious concerns. Because the justice system is expected to be careful. Not rushed. Not pressured. Careful. As these issues continued to build, one thing became clear. This case was no longer just about guilt or innocence. It was becoming a test of process. And that is where things started to shift. Because once people begin to question process, they begin to question everything. Quietly, discussions moved into deeper legal territory. Analysts began to look at technical points. Small details that may not mean much to the average person, but mean everything in court. And those details started to form a pattern. A pattern that suggested the case might not be as straightforward as it first appeared. Still, nothing official had changed. The sentence stood. The system had spoken. But beneath the surface, pressure was building. Then came a move that changed the direction completely. Last month, Kanu filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal in Nigeria. That action alone was expected. But the timing made it more powerful. Because by then, the questions had already started. The appeal did not begin the doubts. It strengthened them. And from that moment, the case entered a new phase. A phase where every step would be watched more closely. A phase where every decision would be questioned more deeply. What started as a strong and final judgment was now becoming something else. Something uncertain. something contested, and something that was no longer fully under control. Because once a case reaches this level of attention, it stops being quiet. It becomes national. And sometimes, even more than that. Now here is where everything turns. The International Criminal Court, does not step into matters lightly. So when its name began to appear in discussions around this case, attention shifted immediately. Because this is not a local body. This is not a routine review. This is international scrutiny. And that alone changes the weight of everything. Reports started to circulate that the life sentence given to Nnamdi Kanu is now under serious review. Not just a casual review, but a focused examination of how the judgment was delivered. That detail matters. Because when a case moves beyond national borders, the focus is no longer just on outcome. It becomes about standards. It becomes about whether the process meets accepted legal principles. And once that question is raised, every step taken during the trial comes under pressure. The key issue being discussed is simple but powerful. Was due process fully respected? That question alone can open an entire case. Because due process is not optional. It is the foundation of any valid judgment. If it is missing or weakened, the decision itself becomes vulnerable. As these concerns gained attention, another claim began to take shape. That the life imprisonment ruling may be void. Not reduced. Not adjusted. Void. That word carries serious weight in legal terms. It suggests that the judgment may not stand at all if certain conditions are confirmed. It means the issue is not about how severe the punishment is, but whether the punishment should exist in that form in the first place. This is where the situation becomes more sensitive. Because once the validity of a judgment is questioned at this level, it goes beyond one individual. It begins to reflect on the system that produced that judgment. At the center of this discussion is Justice James Omotosho. Attention is now shifting toward his handling of the case. Not in a dramatic or emotional way, but in a structured and legal manner. There are indications that he could be called for questioning over possible errors linked to the ruling. This is not a common development. Judges operate within a protected space because of the nature of their role. Their decisions are expected to be reviewed through legal channels, not personal scrutiny. But when concerns reach an international level, the focus can widen. Questioning in this context does not automatically mean wrongdoing. It means there are issues that require explanation. It means certain decisions within the judgment are now being examined more closely. And that alone signals that something serious is unfolding. Legal observers are now pointing to specific areas of concern. These include the structure of the trial, the interpretation of charges, and the handling of key legal principles. Each of these areas may appear technical, but they are critical. Because even a small error in legal interpretation can affect the entire outcome. If a court applies the wrong standard, or moves outside accepted procedure, the result can be challenged. And when such challenges are strong enough, the judgment can lose its strength. This is why the current situation is not being treated as ordinary. It is not just about whether the sentence was harsh. It is about whether the sentence was built on a solid legal foundation. As this process continues, pressure is building from different directions. On one side, there is the ongoing appeal within Nigeria. On the other side, there is growing international attention. These two forces are now moving at the same time. And when that happens, the pace of events can change quickly. Institutions begin to act with more caution. Decisions become more calculated. And every step carries greater consequences. What makes this moment even more important is the signal it sends. If an international body begins to question a high-profile judgment, it sets a precedent. It tells the world that the case is not closed. It tells observers that there are issues that cannot be ignored. And it places responsibility on all parties involved to respond clearly. At the same time, it also raises expectations. Because once a case reaches this level, people expect answers. Clear answers. Not silence. Not delay. This is where the situation becomes delicate. Because managing both legal pressure and public attention is not simple. Any move can be interpreted in different ways. Any delay can raise new questions. and any decision will be closely examined. For now, nothing final has been declared. But the direction is clear. The case has moved beyond its original frame. It is no longer just a national matter. It is now part of a wider legal conversation. A conversation about process. A conversation about accountability. And a conversation about how justice is applied when the stakes are high. At this stage, one thing stands out. This is no longer a routine legal development. It is a moment that could redefine how this case is viewed, both within Nigeria and beyond. And as the pressure continues to build, the next steps will carry more weight than ever before. Now the focus shifts to what all of this means going forward. Because at this stage, the situation is no longer just about what has happened. It is about what happens next. And that is where the real pressure begins. For Nigeria, this moment is sensitive. Not because of noise or public reaction alone, but because of what is at stake within the system itself. When a case of this level begins to face both local appeal and international attention at the same time, the impact goes deeper than one courtroom. It begins to test structure. It begins to test confidence. And it begins to test how strong the system truly is under pressure. The case involving Nnamdi Kanu is now sitting at the center of that test. On one side, there is the ongoing appeal within Nigeria. That process is expected to examine the judgment carefully, focusing on legal arguments presented by both sides. Appeals are not unusual, but in this situation, the appeal carries more weight because of everything surrounding the original ruling. It is no longer just a second look. It is a critical review. On the other side, there is the growing attention linked to the International Criminal Court. Even without a final position, the involvement of an international body changes perception. It places the case in a wider space where standards are compared, not just applied. And that comparison can influence outcomes. Now both tracks are moving at once. Local review. International observation. And that creates a unique situation. Because each step taken within Nigeria will now be watched more closely than before. Every legal argument, every decision, and every response will carry added meaning. This is where caution becomes important. Because in cases like this, one decision can shape everything that follows. Attention is also still on Justice James Omotosho. The discussion around possible questioning has not disappeared. Instead, it has become part of a larger issue about judicial responsibility. When concerns are raised at this level, it is no longer about one judgment alone. It becomes about how decisions are made and how they are defended when challenged. That kind of scrutiny can have lasting effects. Not just for one judge, but for the system as a whole. At the same time, public interest remains high. Across Nigeria, people are watching closely. Opinions are still divided, but one thing is clear. There is a growing demand for clarity. People want to understand what is happening, and more importantly, why it is happening. That demand adds another layer of pressure. Because legal processes are expected to be precise, but public attention moves faster. Balancing both is not easy. And in moments like this, that balance becomes critical. Another important factor is timing. How quickly decisions are made from this point will matter. If the process moves too slowly, it can create doubt. If it moves too fast, it can raise fresh concerns about fairness. So every step must be measured, careful, deliberate, because the consequences are wide. If the original life sentence is eventually confirmed, it will reinforce the authority of the initial ruling. But if serious errors are officially established, the outcome could shift completely. That shift could take different forms. It could mean a retrial. It could mean a modification of charges. Or it could open the door to a broader legal reset of the case. Each of these paths carries its own impact. And each one will send a message. A message about how the system responds when challenged. A message about whether correction is possible. And a message about whether confidence can be maintained even under pressure. This is why the current moment is not just important for this case alone. It is important for perception. Because trust in any justice system is built over time, but it can be affected quickly when high-profile cases face uncertainty. Right now, Nigeria is at that point. A point where actions will speak louder than statements, where outcomes will matter more than explanations, and where every detail will be remembered. For those following closely, the key question is not just what will happen, but how it will happen. Will the process remain strong? Will the decisions be clear? Will the system hold steady under pressure? These are the questions that now define the situation. As events continue to unfold, one thing remains certain. This case has moved beyond its original boundaries. It has become a measure of legal strength, a measure of institutional response, and a measure of how justice is handled when attention is at its highest. Whatever comes next will not just close a chapter. It will shape what people believe going forward. And that is what makes this moment truly significant. At this point, every move matters. Silence will raise questions. Action will create reactions. The institutions involved must now show direction, not confusion. Because uncertainty at this level spreads quickly, the appeal process will play a key role in shaping the next phase. At the same time, any external findings connected to the International Criminal Court will add more weight to whatever decision comes out. This is where alignment becomes important. If both paths point in the same direction, the outcome becomes stronger. If they do not, the situation becomes more complex. For Nnamdi Kanu, the stakes remain high. But beyond him, the real focus is now on the system and how it responds under pressure.